The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Thornton estate as Sophia Bennett moved quietly through the marble hallways. Her footsteps barely made a sound against the polished floors she had cleaned countless times before. At 28 years old, Sophia had worked as the head housekeeper in this mansion for almost 4 years, and she knew every corner of this place better than her own small apartment across town. Sophia had gentle brown eyes that reflected kindness and a warm smile that could brighten any room. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a neat bun, professional and practical for the long days of work ahead. She took pride in her job, not just because it paid well, but because she genuinely cared about maintaining the beauty of this home. The Thornton estate was not just a workplace for her. It had become a sanctuary where she found peace in the rhythm of daily tasks. Julian Thornton was a man who commanded respect wherever he went. At 36, he had built a real estate empire from the ground up, turning small properties into luxury developments that changed city skylines. His dark hair had hints of silver at the temples, giving him a distinguished appearance that matched his sharp business suits. But behind those intense gray eyes, Sophia had noticed something else over the years. There was a loneliness that no amount of success could hide. She had learned about his story in bits and pieces. 3 years ago, Julian's wife Victoria had passed away suddenly from a heart condition that no one knew she had. The loss had devastated him, turning a once vibrant man into someone who buried himself in work to avoid facing the emptiness of his home. Sophia had started working here just a year after that tragedy. She had watched him slowly build walls around his heart. This particular morning felt different. Sophia prepared Julian's breakfast with the same care she always did. Fresh coffee, perfectly scrambled eggs, whole grain toast, and a selection of fresh berries. She arranged everything on the silver tray and carried it to his study on the second floor. The door was slightly open, and she could see him sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen with a frown that showed deep concern. She knocked gently before entering. Julian looked up, and for a moment their eyes met. There was something in his expression that made Sophia pause. It was not just tiredness. It was worry mixed with something she could not quite identify. "Good morning, Mr. Thornton. Your breakfast is ready," she said softly, placing the tray on the side table near his desk. "Thank you, Sophia," he replied, his voice carrying a weight that was unusual even for his normally serious demeanor. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Sophia, could you wait a moment? I need to discuss something important with you." She turned back, her heart beating a little faster. In all her years working here, Julian had never asked for a private conversation beyond basic household matters. She stood respectfully, hands folded in front of her. Waiting for him to speak, Julian stood up from his desk and walked toward the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured gardens below. He seemed to be gathering his thoughts, choosing his words carefully. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. "I find myself in an unusual situation," he began, still looking out the window. "There have been some complications with a major business deal. Some people involved are not entirely trustworthy, and I have reason to believe they might try to access sensitive information I keep here at home." Sophia listened carefully, trying to understand where this conversation was heading. "The security system we have is good, but it's not foolproof. And I have several late-night meetings scheduled over the next 2 weeks that might require me to leave the house at odd hours." He turned to face her now, his expression serious but not unkind. "I know this is an unusual request, and you are absolutely free to say no. But I would feel much more secure if someone I trust was staying in the house during this period." Sophia felt her cheeks warm slightly. "I am here during the day, Mr. Thornton. I could certainly stay later in the evenings if that would help." "I appreciate that. But what I'm asking is different." He paused, seemingly uncomfortable with his own request. "There's a guest room on this floor, just down the hall from my bedroom. I would like to ask if you would be willing to stay there for the next 2 weeks, just as a precaution. You would have complete privacy, of course. Your duties would remain the same. This is purely about security." The request caught Sophia completely off guard. She had never expected anything like this. Her mind raced through the implications. It was certainly unusual, but Julian had always been respectful and professional. She thought about her tiny apartment where she lived alone, And then, about the comfortable guest room she had cleaned many times. More than that, she thought about the genuine concern in Julian's eyes. "I understand if this makes you uncomfortable," Julian continued, misinterpreting her silence. "I can look into hiring a security company instead. I just thought since you already know the house and I trust you completely, it would be less disruptive." Trust. That word resonated with Sophia. In her 4 years here, Julian had never given her any reason to doubt his character. He had been kind when she needed time off for her mother's surgery. He had given her a generous bonus when she worked extra hours during his important business events. He treated her with respect, something not all wealthy employers did with their staff. "I'll do it, Mr. Thornton," she said, surprising herself with how quickly she made the decision. "If it helps you feel more secure, I'm happy to stay in the guest room for the next 2 weeks." Relief washed over Julian's features. "Thank you, Sophia. I truly appreciate this. Please take whatever time you need today to bring your personal items. The room is already prepared. And please, if at any point you feel uncomfortable with this arrangement, just let me know." As Sophia left his study, her mind was spinning with thoughts. This was going to change the dynamic of their professional relationship, even if only temporarily. She would be living under the same roof as Julian, separated by just a hallway. The thought made her nervous and excited in equal measure, though she tried to push those feelings aside. That evening, Sophia packed a small suitcase with clothes and personal items. She informed her neighbor that she would be staying elsewhere for work reasons. As she drove back to the Thornton estate with her belongings, she wondered what the next 2 weeks would bring. The guest room was beautiful, decorated in soft cream and gold tones. It had a comfortable queen-sized bed, a private bathroom, and a small sitting area by the window. Sophia unpacked her things, hanging her clothes in the spacious closet and arranging her toiletries in the bathroom. Everything felt surreal, like she was stepping into a life that did not quite belong to her. Later that night, she lay in the unfamiliar bed. Sophia found herself unable to sleep. The house felt different at night. She could hear the subtle sounds she'd never noticed during her daytime work. The old pipes settling, the wind rustling through the trees outside, and occasionally footsteps from Julian's room down the hall around midnight. She heard those footsteps pause outside her door. Her heart raced. Then came a soft knock, so gentle she almost thought she imagined it. Sophia sat up in bed, her heart pounding as she heard the gentle knock again. She reached for the lamp on the bedside table, flooding the room with soft light. Taking a deep breath to calm her nerves, she walked to the door and opened it slowly. Julian stood in the hallway, still dressed in his work clothes, though his tie was loosened and his shirt sleeves were rolled up. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. The dim hallway light cast shadows across his face, making him look older and more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "I apologize for disturbing you so late," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw the light under your door and thought you might be having trouble sleeping. I wanted to make sure you were comfortable." Sophia felt her tension ease slightly. There was genuine concern in his eyes, nothing inappropriate or threatening. "I'm fine, Mr. Thornton. Just adjusting to a new environment. It takes time to feel comfortable in unfamiliar places." Julian nodded, understanding crossing his features. "I know exactly what you mean. After Victoria passed, I could not sleep in our bedroom for months. I moved to the guest room you're in now, actually. Eventually, I forced myself to go back, thinking it would help me heal, but some nights the silence is still overwhelming." This was the most personal thing Julian had ever shared with her. Sophia had heard him mention his late wife perhaps twice in all the years she had worked here. The raw honesty in his voice touched something deep inside her. "Would you like some tea?" she found herself asking. "I noticed you barely touched your dinner tonight. Maybe a warm drink would help both of us sleep better." A small smile tugged at the corner of Julian's mouth, the first genuine smile she had seen from him in weeks. "That would be nice, actually. Thank you, Sophia." They made their way down to the kitchen together, the house quiet around them. Sophia moved with practiced ease, putting the kettle on and selecting chamomile tea from the cabinet. Julian sat at the kitchen island, a place she had never seen him occupy before. Usually, he took his meals in the dining room or his study, maintaining the invisible boundaries between employer and employee. As the water heated, Sophia found herself stealing glances at him. In the soft kitchen light, without the armor of his business persona, Julian looked different. More human. More approachable. His shoulders were slightly slumped, showing the weight of whatever was troubling him. "The business complications you mentioned," Sophia said carefully as she poured hot water over the tea bags. "Are they really that serious?" Julian was quiet for a moment, accepting the mug she offered him. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, and Sophia felt an unexpected warmth spread through her hand. "I have a competitor who wants to acquire my company," Julian finally said, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. "Richard Westbrook. He's been trying for years, but recently his tactics have become more aggressive. I have reason to believe he might try to access confidential documents to find weaknesses in my business structure. Documents I keep here in my home office." Sophia sat down across from him, cradling her own mug. "That sounds incredibly stressful. But surely you have lawyers and security teams to handle this." "I do," Julian agreed. "But sometimes the threat feels more personal than professional." Richard knew Victoria. He made comments after her death suggesting I was too emotionally compromised to run my company effectively. "He wants me to fail, Sophia. Not just professionally, but personally too." The pain in his voice made Sophia reach across the counter instinctively, placing her hand gently over his. "You're not failing, Mr. Thornton. You've built something remarkable. One difficult person cannot take that away from you." Julian looked down at her hand covering his, and something shifted in the air between them. When he looked back up at her, his eyes held an intensity that made her breath catch. "You have been in my home for 4 years, Sophia, and I have been blind," he said softly. "I never really saw you before. Not truly. I saw someone who kept my house clean and my life organized. But tonight, sitting here with you, I see a person who listens without judgment. Someone who offers comfort without being asked. Someone who makes this cold house feel a little warmer." Sophia felt her cheeks flush. She should pull her hand back, maintain the professional distance that had always existed between them. But she could not bring herself to move. "I see you too," she whispered. "I have seen you for a long time. I have seen how hard you work, how lonely you are, how much you still miss her. I have wanted to say something, to offer some kind of comfort, but it was not my place." "Maybe it is your place," Julian said, turning his hand over so their palms were touching. "Maybe it has always been your place, and I was too lost in grief to notice." They sat there in the quiet kitchen, hands intertwined, neither quite knowing what this moment meant, but both feeling its significance. The clock on the wall ticked away the minutes, but time seemed suspended in their small bubble of connection. Finally, Julian stood up, though he did not release her hand. "Come with me. There is something I want to show you." Sophia followed him, their fingers still linked, as he led her through the house and up the stairs. They did not go to his bedroom or her guest room. Instead, Julian opened a door at the end of the hallway that Sophia had never seen unlocked before. Inside was a room that took her breath away. It was filled with paintings, dozens of them covering every wall. Landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces in vibrant colors. They were beautiful and raw, filled with emotion that practically vibrated off the canvases. "You painted these?" Sophia asked, amazed. Julian nodded, looking around at his work with a mixture of pride and vulnerability. "I started painting after Victoria died. My therapist suggested I find a creative outlet for my grief. No one knows about this room except you now? Not my business partners, not my family, just you." Sophia walked slowly around the room, examining each piece. She could see his journey through the paintings. The early ones were dark and chaotic, full of pain and anger. Gradually they became lighter, more hopeful, though sadness still lingered in the brushstrokes. "This is incredible," she said sincerely. "You have real talent, Julian." It was the first time she had used his first name, and they both noticed. The professional barrier between them was crumbling, replaced by something neither had expected, but both had perhaps secretly wanted. "I painted this one last week," Julian said, guiding her to a canvas in the corner. It showed a woman in profile, her face turned toward a window where sunlight streamed in. The woman had dark hair pulled back simply, and though the face was not detailed, there was something familiar about her posture and presence. Sophia realized with a start that it was her. He had painted her without her knowing. "I sat in the study one morning and watched you arranging flowers in the hallway," Julian explained, his voice low. "The way the sunlight caught your hair, the gentle care you took with each stem. I went straight to this room and painted what I remembered. That was when I first realized that my feelings for you had become something more than gratitude for good work." Sophia turned to face him, her emotions swirling. This was dangerous territory. He was her employer. The power dynamic was complicated, but she could not deny the pull she felt toward him. A connection that had been building slowly over years of small moments and unspoken understanding. "I don't know what to say," she began, but he stepped closer, gently taking both her hands in his. "You don't have to say anything yet," he told her. "I know this is complicated. I know there are 100 reasons why this should not happen. But I need you to know that what I feel is real. You have brought light back into my life, Sophia. Slowly, without even trying, you reminded me that my heart could still feel something other than grief." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. She had her own secrets, her own reasons for keeping her distance from romantic connections. After her father passed away 5 years ago, leaving her family in debt, she had focused entirely on survival. Working, saving, helping her mother pay bills. There had been no room for love, no time for her own happiness. "I'm scared," she admitted honestly. "I'm scared of what this means, of what could go wrong. I'm scared of losing this job that has given me stability. But I'm also scared of walking away from something that feels this right." Julian pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her in an embrace that felt like coming home. Sophia rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. "We will take this slowly," Julian murmured into her hair. "No pressure, no expectations. We will figure this out together, step by step. But I needed you to know how I feel. I could not keep pretending that you were just my housekeeper when you have become so much more." They stood there holding each other in the room full of paintings, two wounded souls finding unexpected comfort in each other's arms. The night stretched on around them, but in that moment, nothing else mattered except the connection they had finally acknowledged. When they finally pulled apart, Julian cupped Sophia's face gently in his hands. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know that you are safe with me. Your job is secure regardless of what we decide about this. I would never use my position to pressure you into anything." Sophia believed him. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, felt it in the gentle way he touched her face. This was not a powerful man taking advantage of an employee. This was two people discovering something unexpected and precious. "I want to see where this goes," Sophia said, making her decision. "Carefully and slowly, but I want to try." Julian smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face and made him look years younger. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and pressed his lips gently against her forehead. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving us a chance." The following morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the windows of the Thornton estate. Sophia woke up feeling different, as if the world had shifted on its axis during the night. The memory of Julian's embrace, the vulnerability they had shared in his painting room, played through her mind like a beautiful dream she was afraid might disappear. She went through her morning routine, preparing breakfast with the same care as always, but her heart felt lighter. When she brought the tray to Julian's study, their eyes met with a new understanding. He smiled at her, a soft expression that made her stomach flutter, and thanked her with a warmth that had not been there before. The next few days passed in a delicate dance between maintaining their professional boundaries during the day and exploring their growing connection during the quiet evening hours. They would meet in the kitchen after dark, sharing tea and conversation that stretched late into the night. Julian told her about his dreams beyond business, his passion for art that he had kept hidden from the world. Sophia shared her own aspirations, admitting that she had always wanted to study interior design, but could not afford the tuition after her father's medical debts consumed their family savings. 1 week into their new arrangement, Julian made a decision that would change everything. He came home early from work, something he rarely did, and found Sophia arranging fresh flowers in the main hall. The afternoon light caught her profile exactly as it had in his painting, and he felt his heart swell with emotion he had thought died with Victoria. "Sophia, could we talk in the library?" he asked, his voice carrying a seriousness that made her nervous. They settled into the comfortable chairs near the fireplace, though no fire burned on this warm afternoon. Julian leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, choosing his words carefully. "I have been thinking about us, about what we are becoming," he began. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, but I need to be honest about something. My feelings for you are not temporary or uncertain. I have fallen in love with you, Sophia. Deeply and completely." Sophia's breath caught. She had felt the same pull, the same growing attachment. But hearing him say the words made it real in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. "I love you too," she whispered, admitting it to herself as much as to him. "But Julian, we both know how complicated this is. Your business partners, your social circle, your family. What will they say when they find out you're involved with your housekeeper?" Julian reached for her hands, holding them firmly. "I don't care what they say. I have spent 3 years living in the shadow of grief, doing what was expected of me. Maintaining appearances for the sake of business and social standing. For the first time since losing Victoria, I feel alive again. You did that, Sophia. You brought me back to life. I will not hide what we have because some people might disapprove." His conviction was beautiful, but Sophia knew the world better than he seemed to in that moment. She had worked in wealthy households before. She had seen how the upper class treated those they considered beneath them. Love might feel powerful in private moments, but it would face harsh judgment in the light of day. "I want to believe it can work," Sophia said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I'm afraid, Julian. I'm afraid of becoming a scandal that hurts your business. I'm afraid of the looks and whispers. I'm afraid of not being enough for your world." Julian pulled her close, and she let herself sink into his embrace. "You are more than enough," he said firmly. "You are everything, and we will face whatever comes together." Their first real test came sooner than either expected. 2 days later, Julian had scheduled a dinner meeting at the estate with his 3 main business partners. These men had been with him since the beginning of his company. Their approval mattered both professionally and personally. Sophia prepared an elegant dinner, setting the dining room with the finest china and crystal, as she served the first course. She felt the eyes of Julian's guests on her. There was Thomas Carmichael, the chief financial officer, a stern man in his 50s with calculating eyes. Next to him sat Gregory Hunt, the head of development, younger but equally shrewd. The third partner, Lawrence Abbott, was the oldest of the group and had known Julian's late wife well. "Excellent meal as always," Thomas commented, though his tone was neutral. "You keep a well-run household, Julian." "I do," Julian agreed, his eyes finding Sophia's, thanks to Sophia. "She is exceptional at everything she does." Something in the way Julian said her name, with such warmth and familiarity, made the 3 men exchange glances. Lawrence frowned slightly, disapproving expression crossing his weathered face. After Sophia returned to the kitchen, the conversation at the table shifted. She could not hear the exact words, but the raised voices carried through the walls. Her hands shook slightly as she prepared the dessert course. Dreading what might be happening in that dining room, when she brought in the coffee service, the atmosphere was tense. Julian's jaw was set in a hard line, his eyes flashing with barely controlled anger. Thomas and Gregory looked uncomfortable, while Lawrence appeared openly hostile. "Thank you, Sophia," Julian said pointedly. "Could you please join us? There is something I want to say, and I want you to hear it." Sophia's heart raced, but she trusted Julian. She stood beside his chair, feeling vulnerable under the scrutiny of these powerful men. "Gentlemen, I want to formally introduce you to Sophia Bennett," Julian began, his voice clear and strong. "Not as my housekeeper, but as the woman I love and intend to build a future with." The silence that followed was deafening. Lawrence was the first to speak, his voice cold. "Julian, have you lost your mind? This is inappropriate on every level. Think about what Victoria would say." The mention of his late wife as a weapon made Julian stand abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Don't you dare use Victoria's memory to justify your prejudice, Lawrence. She would want me to be happy. She would want me to love again. And she certainly would not judge someone based on their occupation or social status." "This is not about love," Thomas interjected, his tone more measured but equally firm. "This is about perception. You are the face of a multi-million-dollar company. Your personal choices reflect on all of us. Dating your domestic employee will create scandal that could damage our business relationships." "Then let it," Julian said fiercely. "If our business partners and clients are so narrow-minded that they cannot accept me finding happiness with a good woman, then I question whether I want to do business with them at all." Gregory spoke up for the first time. "Julian, be reasonable. At least keep this relationship private for a while. Don't make any public announcements. Give people time to adjust to the idea." "You mean hide her like she is something to be ashamed of?" Julian's voice rose. "Sophia is educated, intelligent, kind, and hardworking. She has more integrity in her little finger than most of the socialites in our circle have in their entire bodies. I will not hide my feelings for her, and I will not ask her to pretend to be less than she is." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of these men. Julian's defense of her was everything she could have hoped for, but she could also see the damage this was causing to relationships he had built over years. "Perhaps I should speak," Sophia said quietly, and all eyes turned to her. "Mr. Carmichael? Mr. Hunt? Mr. Abbott? I understand your concerns. I never intended to complicate Julian's life or put his business at risk. If my presence causes problems, I can leave. I can resign from my position and step away from Julian's life entirely." "No," Julian said immediately, turning to her. "Absolutely not. Sophia, you are not going anywhere. These men are my partners, but they do not control my personal life." Lawrence stood up, throwing his napkin on the table. "Then you force us to make difficult decisions, Julian. If you insist on pursuing this inappropriate relationship, we will have to seriously reconsider our partnership. The board of directors will not approve of this scandal." "Let them vote," Julian said, his voice like steel. "Let everyone vote. I would rather lose my company than lose Sophia." The words hung in the air, powerful and irrevocable. The three men stared at Julian as if seeing a stranger. Finally, Gregory shook his head slowly. "I think we all need time to cool down and think rationally," he suggested. "This conversation is going nowhere productive tonight." The meeting ended with strained goodbyes and thinly veiled threats. After the men left, Julian found Sophia in the kitchen, tears finally streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I have ruined everything for you. Your partnerships, your business relationships, everything you worked so hard to build." Julian pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "You have not ruined anything. You have shown me what truly matters. For years, I sacrificed my happiness for business success. I was miserable, Sophia. Wealthy and successful, but absolutely miserable. You changed that. You gave me a reason to smile again, a reason to look forward to coming home. No amount of money or business success is worth losing that." "But what if you really do lose your company?" Sophia asked, pulling back to look at his face. "What if your partners force you out?" "Then I will start over," Julian said simply. "I built one successful business. I can build another. What I cannot do is build another you. You are irreplaceable, Sophia. My company is not." Over the next week, the situation became more complicated. News of Julian's relationship with Sophia spread through his social circle like wildfire. The reactions ranged from surprise to outright disapproval. Some of Julian's oldest friends stopped calling. Invitations to social events were quietly withdrawn. The whispers and judgment were exactly what Sophia had feared. Julian's mother, Margaret Thornton, arrived unannounced one afternoon. She was an elegant woman in her mid-60s, dressed impeccably and carrying herself with the confidence of old money. Sophia answered the door, and the look Margaret gave her was cold enough to freeze water. "I need to speak with my son," Margaret said curtly. "Alone." Sophia showed her to the sitting room and went to find Julian. The conversation that followed was explosive. Sophia tried not to listen, but the raised voices carried throughout the house. "She is using you, Julian." Margaret's voice rang out. "Can you not see that? A poor housekeeper seduces a wealthy widower. It is the oldest story in the world." "Sophia is nothing like that," Julian shouted back. "She never pursued me. If anything, I pursued her. She tried to maintain professional boundaries. She worried about exactly these kinds of accusations. But I love her, Mother. I love her more than I thought I could ever love anyone again." "You are making a fool of yourself," Margaret said icily. "Victoria was a suitable wife from a good family. This girl is a servant. The society you belong to will never accept her." "Then perhaps I do not belong to that society anymore," Julian replied. "Perhaps I never really did. Victoria loved me before I had money, before I had success. She loved me when I was nobody. Sophia loves me the same way, not for what I have, but for who I am. That is worth more than all the social acceptance in the world." There was a long silence, then the sound of Margaret's heels clicking rapidly across the floor. She swept past Sophia without a word or glance, slamming the front door behind her. Julian emerged from the sitting room looking exhausted but determined. He found Sophia and wrapped her in his arms without speaking. They stood together in the quiet hallway, drawing strength from each other. That evening, Julian made a decision. He called an emergency board meeting and announced that he was stepping down as CEO of his company. He would retain ownership of his shares, but would no longer be involved in day-to-day operations. The announcement shocked everyone, but Julian was firm. He had spent too many years sacrificing his happiness for business. He was choosing differently now. 3 months later, Sophia and Julian stood on the terrace of the estate watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Julian had opened a small art gallery in town, featuring his own work alongside other local artists. It was not as lucrative as his real estate empire, but it brought him joy. Sophia had enrolled in interior design courses online, pursuing the dream she had set aside years ago. Their relationship still faced challenges. Some people refused to accept them. Julian's business partners had indeed forced changes in the company's structure. His mother maintained her disapproval, though she had stopped openly fighting their relationship. But they also found unexpected support. Gregory Hunt, the youngest of Julian's former partners, reached out privately to apologize. He admitted he had spoken out of fear of change rather than genuine concern. Some of Julian's true friends stood by him, celebrating his happiness rather than judging his choices. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Julian turned to Sophia and took her hand. "Do you remember that first night when I knocked on your door? I told you I could not sleep because it felt strange having someone nearby after so long alone." Sophia nodded, smiling at the memory. "Now I cannot imagine sleeping without you nearby," Julian continued. "You have transformed my life in ways I never expected. Every challenge we have faced has been worth it because I face it with you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sophia's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Sophia Bennett, will you marry me? Will you officially become part of this complicated, messy, beautiful life we are building together?" Tears of joy streamed down Sophia's face as she nodded. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." As Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, they both knew that challenges still lay ahead. But they also knew that love worth fighting for was love worth having. They had both lost people they cared about. They had both faced judgment and opposition. But they had found each other. That made everything else bearable. The maid who agreed to sleep in the millionaire's room had discovered something far more precious than security or comfort. She had found a partner who saw her true worth, who valued her heart over social status, who chose her even when it cost him everything in the Millionaire, who had pulled her close that first night, had whispered words that changed both their lives forever. Not words of seduction or manipulation, but words of genuine love and respect. Words that acknowledged her as his equal, his partner, his future, together. They proved that love could bridge any divide, overcome any obstacle, and create beauty from the most unexpected circumstances. Their story was not a fairy tale with a perfect ending, but something better. It was real, complicated, challenging, and absolutely worth every moment. The end.